What up, my beautiful African family? This is your main man, Theo VJ Wilson with African Diaspora News. And it's fair to say that in terms of the Pan-African conversation among Black Americans, is pretty much dead in regards to where our focus lies as a people. Foundational Black Americans, as we are referred to, are mainly focused on delineation and reparations. That's a fair conversation to have. However, if we should mistake the conversation being dead in America for the conversation being dead in the world, we are in for a different kind of awakening. And here is why. The geopolitical shift that's happening in regard to the world economic order and who is going to have the power versus when it comes to the battle versus BRICS and NATO makes Africa front and center, and specifically Pan-Africanism in how it's showing up in the world today versus how it showed up in the world 50, 60, 70 years ago, foremost in the conversation of who will have the power in the future. And one of the people that I follow when it comes to the geopolitical conversation, somebody I think you should follow, this man, Jeffrey Sachs, has probably one of the most accurate, critically clear geopolitical minds that I've ever heard. And I have heard him talk about Gaza. I've heard him talk about all sorts of stuff when it comes to Ukraine or Russia. But I never heard Jeffrey Sachs really focus his geopolitical intellect in on what's going on in the African continent. I want you to listen to what Mr. Sachs has to say about Africa's place in the world order coming up and how the idea of Pan-African unity was destroyed on the continent.
Africa's time has come and its turn has come. I believe that by 2050, Africa will be a high-income region. It will be a successful and growing region. It will be a region of peace, and it will be looked to throughout the world for partnership and for innovative solutions. Unlike the first time of Pan-Africanism, Britain, France, and the United States can't stop it this time, because Pan-Africanism was stopped from the outside, not from the inside. It was stopped by a bullet in the head of Patrice Lumumba. It was stopped by repeated overthrows by the CIA and MI6, and it cannot happen anymore. They don't have the power, they don't have the space, and Africa can prevent it.
Now, Mr. Sachs said a whole lot right there, but one of the main things that I took away from that is that Europe couldn't prevent this if they tried. That's a new thing. That's a new development. The fact that Europe could send all of its weapons and its goons, all that it wants to, but because of the alliances that Africa has forged, it literally cannot topple the kind of momentum that Africa has anymore. Is a very powerful change of events, right? And so let's dive into why he said that, because later on in the speech, he goes into one of the main powers that Africa has right now that nobody else has, and that is a growing and young population. Now, the demographic war all over the West, whether you're talking about America, Canada, whether you're talking about Europe, has these folks fallen into far-right fascism, right? The fear of being a minority when white folks were once the majority, right? And not only that, but there's a population collapse happening in not just the West, but the East. When you talk about Japan, when you talk about China, their populations are going away, right? In order for a population to maintain itself, just give you some numbers right here. You have to have a birth replacement rate of thereabouts 2.1 children per woman. 2.1 children per woman is a magic number. That's how you keep your population stable, right? Some women have 5 babies, some women have no babies, but it has to be 2.1 women on average, right? If your population falls to the birth replacement rate of 1.9 babies per woman, you can recover, but it takes 80 years. Right now, the West is teetering between 1.47 and 1.56. That's unrecoverable. China going to do the same thing. They're about 1.3. And you got places like South Korea where the population is replacement rate is like 0.9. 0.9, less than 1 point per woman. Africa's sitting around 5.3 births per woman on average. 5.3 births per woman on average means that according to the UN projections, and listen to me very closely when I say this, we're looking at Africa having a population of 2.5 billion people from its 1.5 billion people now by 2050. And if things keep going like that, you're looking at Africa having a population of 3.7 billion by the year 2100. That's labor and that's military that nobody else on the world can match, regardless of how developed they are, how much money they got, how much technology that they're wielding with their military right now. But with all that possibility, it's not a guarantee that Africa will take its place as a central world power. And before I go into my little rant about this, I want you to hear what else he said that is necessary for Africa to take its place as a powerhouse in this next coming up century. Check this out.
So my view is Africa is next. You're the next region of 1.5 billion people. But it takes some change of perspective and some new strategy. The change of perspective, first of all, is that this has to happen at a continent-wide scale. Africa was left after the imperialist age with 54 countries and a 55th one in dispute. The transformation that I'm talking about cannot happen 54 separate times. It should be an Africa-wide success because scale matters in economics. China and India were able to grow so fast because of a large economy and a large market that supported a lot of innovation and supported a single strategy that was coherent to build out a power system, to build out a fast rail system, to build out a highway system, to build out a 5G digital system. And Africa, I want to act like the Union, like a continental free trade area.
He said it has to be continent-wide. Can't be 54 different times that Africa achieves this kind of unity and development. It has to be all together now, right? And so this is really powerful to me because it's literally going to take this kind of Pan-Africanist push, and that's already starting to develop. When you look at like how fast the Sahel Alliance has started to gather steam, and when you look at the fact that the leaders in Africa that ain't looking like, talking like, sounding like Ibrahim Traore and the people who are standing up for the mineral resource rights to be owned by the people in Africa, the people ain't having it. You're looking at mass upheavals in Africa if the governments ain't sounding like they on this tip, right? So you got also a forming BRICS alliance that wants Africa to win. And this is where it reflects back onto how it could affect the lives of Black Americans. Because, all right, I'm about to put something in some geopolitical context for you, right? Black Americans are the most influential power when it comes to culture in the world. But that's a soft power. And that soft power has everything to do with the hard power that's laid down by the United States. So the fact that the United States had global distribution, right, is the reason why Black music and Black images and hip hop to athletics could go all over the world. Black folks would be so influential because of America's hard power. And a key piece of America's hard power was it being the world reserve currency. So let's say America in and of itself loses power. America in and of itself can't flex the kind of might that it flexed all over the world. Thus, if Black America is attached to it, we lose that power too. So what happens now if America finally loses its world reserve currency status and they want to pay you reparations in a defunct currency? What happens if you win your fight for reparations? Let's say we actually stand 10 toes down, we delineate, and we reparate. We get the money, they cut the check. And the next day, we lose reserve currency status. You got a bunch of monopoly money that you done fought so hard for. Meanwhile, if the BRICS alliance continues to create the kind of resource wealth it is talking about, if China and Russia decide that they want to have a fair trading relationship with Africa, using Africa's resource to back up a global reserve currency, because they're starting to look more like the adults in the room than the West. You see where I'm going here? What's the point of you getting cut a check with defunct money if our currency in America is no longer the currency by which all other currencies are valued against? Let me put this one last thing in perspective for you. A lot of times we forget that during the building of the Transcontinental Railroad in the mid-1800s, Black folks and Chinese folks worked side by side, was abused side by side, was suffering dehumanization, torture side by side. You're talking about being worked to death, black lung, nobody seeing our value in our lives. Everybody saw Black folks and Chinese as the same kind of expendable. What happened to change the Chinaman's fate? What happened to China? What happened to China was it became a global power. And because China had global power, it could flex power for Chinese folks anywhere across the world. So now when you look at how the fact that Asians do come in and they get a better deal, and Asians get, put in front of us in the line of resources in America, we have every right to fight against that preferential treatment. After all, we've been here since the beginning, right? But the reason why they can do that is because there is no individual power without collective power, right? To the point where Asians can flex nuclear weapons now, right? Multiple Asian countries can flex nuclear weapons, right? India's Asian, right? They can flex banking power right now, right? Indian immigrants come over here, they want to buy up that 7-Eleven where they can take out loans and credit it against the global currency system from their own bank and make that valuable here in America. There was even an incident here in America where Italians got lynched down in Louisiana. And they were able to get reparations because it caused a diplomatic incident with Italy itself. And since Italy was globally powerful, they leveraged reparations on behalf of Italian Americans who got lynched. Well, what happens to Black folks if there's nobody who can launch a nuke on our behalf? Nowhere in the world. What happens to Black folks everywhere in the world if nobody can create a sanction on our behalf because we're being abused when it comes to our human rights? Ask the Jews, right? How they pursued global power through Zionism. And regardless of how you feel about it, I'm not here to have that conversation. My point is that they understood very, very well. We need a state. We need a state because the world works on states, and we need a state that's nuclear armed and powerful and has economic and military leverage to defend our interests everywhere in the world. Do you get where I'm going with this? If nobody can launch a nuke or level a sanction on your behalf anywhere in the world, you are vulnerable. If you look at the path to global power that other folks have taken from oppression, it all involved collective power to back up individual power. The future is unwritten, but we can write it. If you turn on your crystal ball and look 30, 40, 50 years into the future, and you're the one who contributed to the fact that African people are globally consequential, militarily protected, and economically sound worldwide, that means that you will be the ancestor that your descendants thank you for your efforts for. So that's just my thoughts on it. I want to hear y'all's in the comment section. Yes, I do read these, even though I don't respond to all of them. This is African Diaspora News. We are here to give you the news in regards to Black folks and the Black family, African folks, the worldwide. And we appreciate you supporting us. I need you to go ahead and tap that like button. If you like what you heard, go ahead and download the app. That's $9.99 a month. And if you like what I say and how I say it, go ahead and tune into my personal channel, Theo Cyrus Rising, right here on YouTube. I'm Theo E.J. Wilson. I'll see you next time. Well, I saw you this time.